So, you want to go to Japan, whether that be for vacation or for work, but you have concerns, worries, you've heard horror stories, and you don't know whether Japan is going to be the right fit for you and you still want to answer those questions. Well, in my last video, guys, I told you 5 reasons why I love Japan. Now, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why Japan might not be for you. So number 5 is cash. For those of you who don't know, Japan is pretty much a cash-based society. Now, from what I understood, Japanese people did actually have credit cards, but for the most part, the shops and eateries, any place that you go, don't actually accept them. So it actually becomes a necessity to drag cash around with you while you're in Japan. Now, some people may actually see that as quite charming, the fact that you're having to carry cash around all the time, but that luster wears up very, very fast. And I'll tell you guys the reason. It's because Japan's denominations are gargantuan. The money that you use in Japan, you've got 1 yen coins, you've got 5 yen coins, 10 yen coins, 50 yen coins, 100 yen coins, and then the notes as well that go on top of that, 1,000, there was a 2,000 at one point, but I believe that's now gone. There's a 5,000, there's a 10,000, and so on and so forth. The problem is, guys, is that you're getting denominations of 1s, 2s, 5s, and these coins will just build up. They'll just build up in your wallet, and your wallet's just going to become like, gargantuan as a result of that. And it's a real issue, when you're trying to, for example, buy a ticket at a train station or something like that, or, you're just trying to pay for a meal, and you've got all these coins just like rummaging around in your wallet. But there are actually ways that you can circumvent this. Japan's very good at that. For example, in Japan I use my own Pasmo card, which I would top up at regular intervals to travel around. There are ways around it, but just bear in mind, guys, that if you do go to Japan, you're going to be using cash quite a lot. So number 4 is Japanese customs. Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there, guys. I love the Japanese culture, and this is in no way an attack on their culture. It's just more like a comment more than anything else that you might need to be aware of while you're out there. Now, I, for the most part, thought the Japanese customs were quite decent. For example, let's say you're on public transport. Don't go on your phone while on public transport and show consideration for your fellow passengers. Don't eat while you're walking. Chopstick etiquette. And then came the customs that were, how can I say, a little bit outdated. When I was working in Japan as a teacher, I was going to elementary schools, and the idea of an English ALT, at least in Sapporo, is that they would eat lunch with the children. And the teacher, as they should set an example to the children by eating all of the food on their plate. Now, for the most part, these lunches were great. They were nutritious, they were well balanced, because every school would have a nutritionist who would decide what the children would have on that particular day and what the teachers would have on that particular day as well. And you would get that for maybe about 180 yen, which is literally, £1.30. But there were 2 particular foods which I could not stand, okay? One of them was something called white stew. It was like a sort of creamed potato, milk, cream. It just looked awful. I mean, I hated the stuff. And I think what really pushed me over the edge with it is that on a particular week, I had to have it 3 days in a row. Like I say, I ate it all, but I hated the stuff. It smelled awful for me, because I'm not a big fan of like the whole dairy stuff and things like that. I'm not a big fan of cheese, especially liquefied cheese in a soup. And yeah, that was a struggle. Ugh, just thinking about it makes me feel quite queasy. And then the other one, I think you might know what food that is if you've gone to Japan or if you know anything about Japanese cuisine. It's a lovely food called natto. Yes, natto, for those of you guys who don't know, is fermented soybeans. And they are pretty much as disgusting as they sound. Now, I only had natto twice while I was in Japan. The first time was in my training week, and I remember the day that it happened. It was my second training day, and my teacher, who was looking after me on the day, showing me, the demo lessons, He comes over to me and says to me, Dom, we're gonna have natto today. And, you know, at this point, I never had natto before, so I had an open mind. I was thinking, you know, can't be that bad. How wrong I was. There's generally a holy triangle for every food. The smell, the look, and of course the taste. Natto pretty much failed all three of these. First of all, the taste. The taste was just, I'm pretty certain that's what dead horse would taste like. The smell was pretty much ghastly. I can't even describe it. It wasn't nice though. But the one thing that really got me was the look of it. Oh, it looked awful. Like literally, what you would get with natto is you would get a little pot, and you'd get some sauce, and you would stir it around a little bit. And the problem is that when you got your chopsticks in there and you pulled it out, it would look like literal snot. And of course, with Japanese customs, you have to eat everything on your plate. So trying to gulp this stuff down for the good of the children was a pain. That's one custom which I didn't like too much, but I understand where it comes from. I understand it comes from a respect for the food that you're eating, but not for me. And the other custom, which I thought was a little bit outdated, was in regards to tattoos. Let's say, for example, you go to Japan and you go to a beautiful onsen like this one, and you want to just relax and take in the views and enjoy a blissful day. Well, too bad, because if you have a tattoo, chances are you're not going to get in. The reason for this is that tattoos in Japan are synonymous with the Yakuza. So if you are a foreigner and you come to Japan with a tattoo, quite a few people may look at you and think you are a mafia gang leader. Now, Japan's actually starting to adapt to this a bit more now. They know with the more, say, popular onsen that tourists frequently go to, they're a bit more open-minded about the tattoos. But when I was in Hokkaido, that was never the case. I went to Noboribetsu, didn't accept tattoos. I went to quite a few onsen resorts all over Japan, smaller ones, they didn't accept tattoos. So you have to bear in mind, guys, that if you have a tattoo, you might not be able to get into Japanese onsens unless it is already mentioned beforehand, or if it's a mainstream onsen and they're more accepting of that kind of thing. Okay, so number 3. Now number 3 is actually another Japanese custom, but I feel that it's so fervent in Japanese culture that it deserves its own spot. And that custom is something called tatemae, or literally the way that you build yourself up in front of other people. Now the idea of tatemae is that a person will adhere to social norms based on their status and position. In other words, they will do things that are against their honest intentions. Now compare that to England, you know, we're much more direct, we pretty much say it how it is, and we move on. Go to any football game in England, for example, and you're going to see quite a few people who will be yelling at their players for playing like piss, myself included. Now in Japan, that's not really what they're all about. One thing I didn't like in Japan in regards to tatemae is that you don't really say no. For example, if a teacher comes up to you and they ask if you can eat food with their students, even though you wanted to just get some work done or something like that, you can't really say no. You kind of have to go with them and do it with them to maintain the peace. For a person who is more abrupt, like myself, and coming from a culture that is more abrupt, it's just not something which I liked that much. But I understand it comes from a compassionate and empathetic place. It actually originated more from Japanese ancient agricultural areas, where Japanese farmers and families would be in little communities. And in order to prevent yourself and your family becoming extradited from that community, you would have to make sure that you all kept good relations with each other. And ultimately that kind of mindset has brought itself over into modern Japan, where people don't really stand out. They're more collectivist and they're more working towards the same goal together rather than pursuing their own individual goals. For a Westerner, like I say, it can be seen as lying, it can be seen as dishonest, but you know, you need to keep a more open mind about it, that it's not there to hurt you, it is there as part of Japanese culture to be more compassionate. So number 2 relates to humidity. Japan is a very humid country, and I learned this the hard way on my first few days. So the reason that Japan is so humid, especially in the summer, is from a phenomenon called the Pacific High. I can't really get into the specifics of it because I am not a geographer, and I will leave that to someone else. But that is generally why it's so humid there. And for a person like me who comes from a more dry country, humidity is my bane. I cannot stand humidity. And I remember when I first came to Japan, and I had to go to Tokyo for training, and I'm sitting in the lobby. I'm sitting in my suit and stuff like this. I'm all smart, I'm ready to go, and I'm waiting for my contact to come over to the reception, pick me up, and then we walk over to the office, which is about a 10-minute walk away. So eventually, my contact comes in, and I notice that he is sweating a lot. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't be that bad out there, is it? And of course I step outside, I'm thinking, yeah, this is no problem, this feels great. Not true. I get to the office 10 minutes later and I am literally a human waterfall. I'm pretty certain it's probably the most uncomfortable I have ever been in public, and the most uncomfortable I have ever been in general, and I would not wish it upon my worst enemy. Now, Japan has ways of dealing with humidity. There are stuff like cooling wipes that you can use. You can buy a face towel, which you can use, and that became one of my best things, just taking a face towel to every lesson that I went to, because when you're doing lessons, you're sweating as well. So you need to use the face towel to just get rid of that, because, no thank you. And luckily for me, I didn't actually have to wear a suit at my schools, because I was in elementary school. They were more cool with me wearing a polo shirt and chinos rather than a suit, because if I was in a suit, I'm pretty certain I would have been gone. Dead. Now there are various ways that you can deal with the humidity. Of course, you can use the face towels like I've already mentioned. Shaved ice is a great way of doing it as well, kakikori, which you'll be seeing pretty much all over Japan during the summer. And also midoricha, you know, green tea, which is well versed in helping cooling down the body and stuff like that. So there are ways of dealing with the humidity, but just bear in mind that if you do go to Japan, you will be experiencing that. Now finally, here we go guys, number 1. And I know that number 1 is going to be a little bit of a shock to some people, but from my personal experience, it's the one thing which I didn't like about Japan. And that was Tokyo. That's right, I did not like Tokyo. The reason being is that Tokyo pretty much epitomised everything I didn't like about Japan. Maybe I'm giving Tokyo a bit of a bad rep because when I first came into Tokyo I was in a pretty bad mood. I'd just come off like a 24-hour flight, so I was basically like 11 hours to Sri Lanka, 6 hours in Sri Lanka and then another 8 hours to get to Japan. I was ill, I couldn't hear out of one ear, and also I got lost on the way to my hotel, so I'm carrying a massive suitcase behind me. Upstairs, I got off the wrong exit. Basically, I had no way of finding my hotel except through blind luck. Luckily, eventually I did find it, but by the time I got there, I was tired, I was sweating, I was just angry. And I blamed it on Tokyo. And yeah, I think since that point, I didn't like Tokyo very much. One thing is that Tokyo is pretty much a literal concrete jungle. It's too hot. And I've already told you guys about the example that I had when I went off to training, and I'm not even kidding. I don't understand how people can wear suits in Japan. I don't know how they can do it, obviously their bodies are more used to it, but for me, I could never wear a suit in Japan, let alone Tokyo. And another thing I didn't like about Tokyo is that it's just very easy to get lost. The subway is just all over the place. It's like a maze. It's literally a labyrinth. I wouldn't be surprised if I found the Minotaur down there somewhere. And also, I mean, it was just too big. It was too big for me. I mean, you know, I come from a small village, hardly anything in the way of big buildings around here. Even in London, when you go to London, there's hardly any big buildings there. You know, nothing that stretches up into the sky. And Tokyo has those in abundance. It's just too much for me. I was just overwhelmed when I got there. I was overwhelmed by the amount of people. and it was just way too much going on for me. Like, it physically exhausted me to be in Tokyo. Too easy to get lost, too easy to become overwhelmed, too hot. But you know guys, there are going to be people here who love that kind of stuff, you know, and good for you. But me personally, I'm just saying it from my own experience that I didn't like it, and those are some reasons why you might not like it as well if you come from the same background as me. And that is it guys, that is it. Those are the 5 reasons that Japan might not be for you. Now I'm not saying that Japan is a terrible country, far from it. You know, I made a video like literally a week ago saying how much I love the place, and I do. But this video was mainly for people who don't know what to expect from Japan, like they have their concerns, they have their worries, and they just want some kind of reassurances as to what might be an issue while they're out there. So I hope this video was useful to you guys. If you do like this video, please like, subscribe, please follow my Twitter and my Facebook, both of them now, and I'll see you guys for the next video, which I'm not sure what I'm going to be working on next, but I'll leave it as a surprise.